Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. This is week 2 of our new series, which looks at a small selection of posts across the various rug hooking and punch needle social media pages, just a small selection of the many, looking at them for design ideas and newness and interest and just favorites. So I have not by any means seen all of the posts that have been up this week. We had the opportunity a few days ago to take off to Cape Cod one more time this summer with the kids before the homeschooling starts. So we did that. So we are super backed up. I'm super backed up, super tired. So I'm really late getting this to you. But I've missed a lot this week. And the ones that I pulled, I absolutely love. And I'm sure there were a million more that were just as great that I wish I would have caught. But these, for this week, have been my favorites in terms of interest. So let's have a look at the ones that I chose, and we'll talk about them as we go piece by piece. I've been having a little bit of trouble with the new format of Facebook. I don't know if you've been having the same issue, but they've changed the way that the screen looks. And for me, it's a real gem. Super confusing and just new, which is always a problem for me when it comes to technology. So let's see how it goes.
Okay, so I think I might be sharing my screen with you. Let's see. There we go. Let's assume that this is working and look at our first rug. This rug came up in the Facebook group called A Lady of the Club. I love this group. This is a post by Deanna Babb. I'm assuming it's Deanna, same name as mine, but spelled correctly, unlike mine, which is really nice. This is the first rug that I'm looking at, and it's called Rug Beginnings. That's the caption that she put. It's a good rug to start with at the beginning of our series right here, the beginning of the show, because it's the beginning of the rug. And I love this rug for so many reasons. As you can see, this is a runner. And, I hardly ever like rugs that are directional for the floor because there's a top and a bottom. And I always feel like if you're standing on the wrong side of it, you're looking at it upside down. This rug would be my number one exception of all time because it's such a clever design and a clever, smart, wise use of space. And giving the image of space stretching upward, right? There's so much sky in this. This is such a beautiful hand-drawn piece. There must be lots of symbolism in here that is unique to the artist, the maker, Deanna. It's a little village scene, as you can see, and there's a little garland flag here, which I love. Beautiful birch tree that's coming out really well. A squirrel. I love how with this design, as your eye travels up the birches, you're seeing um, instead of a tree with flowers, you're seeing a flower tree with leaves. Usually when you see flowers and flowering trees in hooked pieces, you get a lot of leaves and a few flowers. This is the opposite. You're getting a lot of flowers and a few leaves. I think it's super effective the way that the flowers, you can see she's got some started down here at the bottom, are coming out. And I'm guessing, just looking at the design, I'm thinking I'm seeing an owl here, if you can follow my cursor. But as your eye travels up, you see circles of many different sizes. And I'm guessing that Deanna used like cups, pan lids, things like that to make perfect circles because there are clusters of flowers at all of the expected places that you would find on a tree. Very sort of, the flowers are super like, if you remember the artist Mary Engelbreit, that kind of Art Deco, cartoony, really happy, bright feel. This whole rug has that beautiful, happy, bright feel. It has so much height, and it's such a gorgeous piece. I can see you already have the binding on it too, which is fantastic. But I am so anxious to see how this goes. This is such a gorgeous start. So that is the beginning of our beginning too. Let's look at the second rug that I have here. This is put up in the Woolly Mason Jar rug hooking page by Patty Beals, and she writes, finished another encompassing design pattern. It's called Crocs and Jugs, and she's ready to be steaming it and whipping it. This is a 2013 pattern, and it is by Encompassing Design, but it's up specifically by Christine Little, and this is a gorgeous pattern. I love stoneware Crocs. My collection of one still stands. I have not found a second yet that I can afford, but I absolutely love this. You can see with a pattern like this how you would be able to personalize it. The pattern I did last month, I personalized a little bit with a 2020 for the year, but you could do things with initials or words or names or numbers or ages. There's so many things you could do with a design like this. This is so pretty and effective, and the colors are pretty, true to what you would expect with stoneware, blues and browns, right? Really simple, really effective, and that sort of feel is carried through to the border, which is so simple. I can't remember ever before seeing a rug with just a single band of white. It has a real sort of 1930s feel, the way that this is framed up to me, and a lot of nice horizontal, all the way around. You can see it's like, let me see if I can do this with my cursor, across, down, and across again. A lot of beautiful directional hooking and a lot of variation to the pattern behind. The color behind is just gorgeous. Really simple, really nice. And in the comments, I loved how somebody wrote that they had also done the same pattern in the past, and they posted a picture of it. And it had more pieces in it. And Patty responded by saying that she simplified this one a little bit. She cut some of the things out and changed it a bit. And that is one of the really great things about hooking. When you find a pattern that you're like, and you think to yourself, you know what, I don't want 12 stoneware jugs in it. I just want this many. And you do it the way that you want, and you make the very thing that you want, makes it so, so special and personalized, because anybody else doing this encompassing design pattern will not have done it this way. Not the same colors, not the same configuration, and in this case, not the same number of jugs. So super personal and really, really pretty, Patty. It's gorgeous. So this one came up on my page, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club by Michelle Ross Miller. Sorry if you can hear the dog barking. Buttons is driving me crazy today. By Michelle Ross Miller. This is a really, really, really great pattern. I absolutely love this. So she writes, I just finished this rug, which is a gift to my daughter who is leaving to start at Trent University next week. And she adapted it with permission from the designer. It's a design by Gail Duclos Lapierre. And it was featured in Rug Hooking magazine. And this piece is actually, I'm guessing because the original was 43 by 30, and it's called Just Paddling Along. So this design actually won the People's Choice Award in 2003. And I think she did this pretty true, because the original design had a beaver, a bear, and a deer, which this one has too, with a goose on the back. I think she might have added one of the little tortoises here. I don't remember that from the original design. It's in one of the books I had, and I saw it recently, but this is just such a beautiful design. And there might be some more symbolism in here if it's customized a little bit. It's so nice to think of it going away with a daughter who's leaving for school, having something special to bring. It's really a beautiful rug, and it's probably a very personal rug that evokes family vacations and special times. And the composition of this I really love. I can see why this won the People's Choice Award, because when you think about doing your own composition, you always want to think about how you frame it up. And in this case, you're framing in a pond scene with the central figures being in the center, right? So this could represent members of the family. You've got things that are vertical that are very strong, like cattails, like a heron or an egret, like the Canada goose on the back, and like the tree on the right. But then you've got things that are softer, like the tree line and the distant mountain line. And then you've got the added interest of something that goes off both of those directionals, the petals going diagonally. It really brings you right to the center. It's an amazing composition, and the way that it's done here with the dark mountain line in the back and the lighter trees, and framed up with a really prominent tree on the right and the cattails on the left. It's beautifully framed. It's a gorgeous composition. I absolutely love this piece. It came out great. And Michelle, I bet your daughter is going to absolutely love looking at this every day. It's going to be a bit of a security thing, I'm sure, and a constant happiness. This one was put up in Hooked Line and Sinker, a rug hooking club. This is by Mary Raymond Allenstein. I'm just going to move it up. I'll read it to you first. It says, this mat started with a vine and a flower free pattern by Martha Lowry in the April-May 2020 Atha magazine. And she says, then I added the landscape and dawn sky, and I tweaked the flowers. I thought about naming my version, Oops, I Watered Too Much. And I just think this is so cute. It has a real Jacobean flavor. Knowing that this pattern evolved as much as it did from something really simple and basic to this is extraordinary. This has such a Jack and the Beanstalk quality for me because it's so overgrown. It was so in a beautiful way, super Jacobean feel. And that bird on top, it's almost like, what's that orange bird? Is that an oriole? Gorgeous colors all around, and the sky is exceptional. I loved how somebody wrote on this pattern something like, "Please invite me to this cottage," because it's the tree or the flowering vine is so prominent. You don't notice the tree until, sorry, the little cottage until later, and when you do, it's super inviting. It looks like there's a little pathway or little steps leading up. And then one of the touches I really like is the black and white going around. That makes me wonder if you had something that was all stripy that did that on its own. That is such a good checkerboard effect on the tulip flower, the trumpet flower, and then the sunflower shape. That is so cool. I love the simple use of color in this. The sky is what really pops, and then for me, the bird at the top. But I love the simple use of color in the green part of the vine. It's like the dark, the light, and then this coppery accent, and then the outlining really pops it against the sky, because then you're able to keep your blue flower against the blue sky. It popped it beautifully. It's a beautiful composition. I love this piece. And I just love knowing when you start a pattern, when anybody starts something and embellishes it and it becomes your own. For me, that's the most special kind of scenario. This is another beautiful one. This was done by Kim Adams, who is just amazing. Everything she posts, I absolutely love it. This is a design by Lindsay Bowles and based on one of her watercolors. And I really wanted to put this up because I see a lot of Lindsay Bowles posts in a lot of places, and I think they're all extraordinary. She's an amazing artist, and her work lends itself so well to rug hooking. But this has such a watercolor effect with the little lamb looking up at the flowers and very affectionate toward the female figure, some simple flowers on the ground, a lot of color changing in the background, a lot of directional hooking and movement in the sky, and the perfect composition set off the angled hillside and then the complementary dark, dark, dark tree line behind it. So perfect because they're very soft colors here, and the feeling of a watercolor has been maintained, like the very light blue frock and the white sheep, lots of blues and grays, but it still manages to really, really, really pop without using tons of color. The headband, the red in the headband is repeated with the flowers. It's not a wild orgy of color. It's very controlled. It reminds me of like a British landscape painting. Something, really, really simple and perfect. And the framing on it is great too. I love the way that it's framed this way. If you can see the border, really, really different. So look for Lindsay Bowles too. She has a page on Facebook called Lindsay Bowles Artist. Okay, so because there's going to be multiple Lindsay Bowles in this huge world on Facebook, but her company is called Heartfelt Vermont VT Custom Creations. And if you look for her, also if you're a member of the Willie Mason Jar group, she adds a lot of free patterns to that group. So if you're able to find free patterns from her by searching her name there, Lindsay Bowles, and find some that you like, then you can blow them up on your computer, maybe tape them together, trace them, transfer them onto your backing. She does such beautiful stuff, and if you can do something like this, I mean, that's just exceptional. It's so pretty and it's so effective. And I love, Kim, I don't know if you're leaving it draped over the chair, but it looks so good there. It really does. It's beautiful. Well done. I love it. Let's see what the next one is. This is a super fun piece in Contemporary Rug Hooking Group. Penny Swan Rutledge. This is such a happy piece. You see, let me get rid of this stupid thing here. I'm offline so nobody pops up with some crazy message. This is such a happy piece, and I hardly ever see pieces like this right now, and it's just what I need during these crazy isolation times. But it's such a happy piece. And Penny writes, finally finished hooking one. I'm pleased to say I didn't pack. In terms of, if you're a beginner, packing means that you hook too many loops in a small spot and you start to get all buckly and too dense. You don't want to pack, and you don't want to do the opposite, which is not put enough loops in, because then you get the little gaps that are known as holidays. When you get a feel for it, you do neither, but it's very hard to not pack. I still pack a lot when I'm not checking myself constantly. But she says, I'll work on the finishing soon. And what color should the yarn be? So this is a great piece. Gone Hooking. Painted Mermaid Designs. So that's the company who did this. The pattern is 18 by 24. And it's a super happy, simple piece with a convertible car and two ladies in the front seat with hats. It's a little bit reminiscent for me of the Red Hat Society, the red and the purple. And maybe someone else would hook it that way. But this is hooked so beautifully. I love the happy, bright, summery colors. I love the use of grays. You're not seeing a ton of blacks. You're not seeing really any primaries. You got a lot of bright colors. I love how the tail lights sort of echo the centers of the flowers. That's a really clever use of bringing it together. Penny, you are like a master at bringing it together because you've got the motion in the skies that really mimics the hair going in the two different directions and the yellow with the yellow. And then you've got the center greens with the greens that really pop it on the hats, the teal and green. It's really good color composition. The road really stands out too. The little bit of road heading in front and then the road be right under. Lots of movement, motion, variation, but still very, very clear. The horizon line is very clear too, so you can see the hair, the ribbon, the hats, everything really stands out. And one of the things about this post that I thought was so interesting was in the tag thing, Penny saying, what color do you think I should finish the edges with? And this is what's so interesting about rug hooking or any art is each person is going to have a different opinion. And there were so many comments in this post. One person said, I would pick the pink like the car, like, the exact same sort of fuchsia pink, bind it in that. And another person said, bind it in something dark so that your eye doesn't travel off the piece. So in other words, the background border is sort of a medium gray, like a dove gray. So this other person is saying, bind it in something really dark to stop your eye from traveling because from the gray it might travel. And that's a very good point too. Yet another person says, do the edges in the dark tan of the road. So pick up that part of the composition. And then yet another person says, do the binding in the dark purple of the flowers. So this like blue violet of the flowers. So it's just interesting to read the comments on a post like this, because for each person that said, do the pink of the car, you immediately picture it and go, oh, interesting, you could do that. And then someone else says, do the tan of the road. And you say, oh, yeah, no, that would work really well, too. I don't know what I would do. I think I would do navy myself, like the hat on the right. But it's so personal from person to person. I also love the eggplant color on the flowers. But then I also love the dark purples. It's a hard choice. Penny, let us know what you chose. I haven't seen any more of this one, so I wonder if you've bound it yet, but I would love to know what you decided to do in the end, because I think with this piece, with the background frame being as light as it is, I love it being this light because it keeps the mood of it light, but I would be so curious to see how you are going to handle the binding, because I think it's going to make a big difference to the piece. Of course, we don't know what kind of a wall or a floor you're putting it on. There might be no need to worry about the eye traveling off of it because it might be going on a darker floor or wall. But it'll be a curious thing regardless to see what you choose, because this is just a gorgeous piece. So our next piece, oh, this is so nice. This is Hazel the Cat. So this was put up in Contemporary Rug Hooking Group by Linda Milrod. And I'll read what it says first. This is, I mean, look at this cat, Hazel. This is so well done. It's crazy. She says, with the large Embrace project, oh, that's sort of unrelated. We brought Hazel home with her brother when she was 8 weeks old. Her brother was killed by a car 4 years later, but Hazel, forever the alpha cat, lived for 18 years and became particularly attached to me after our kids moved out. This is a memorial to her on top of the Toronto house where she spent most of her happy life. The flowers, lilacs, and lavender have memorial connotations for me in different ways. So this is such a personal rug. This is just unbelievable composition. The cat is so well done. You're getting the sense that it's a calico cat, like a tabby type cat, because there's blues, there's grays, there's golds, there's browns, there's so much, and there's a little bit of white on the chin, so you're really getting a feel for what Hazel might have looked like if her face had these particular markings Each cat, if you're a cat lover, you know each one is so special and different, and their markings are so funny. They're with them always, and it really gives each cat personality. This cat has a lot of personality, and I love how she's sitting up on the house like this. It's like, it's mentioned already that Hazel was a real alpha personality cat, and placing her up on top of the house like this, it's like she owns the house. She's taking ownership of probably the house and the people inside the house, but that's just what cats do. It's so beautiful, and the way that it's framed on top, it does evoke a memorial. Whenever you enter a beautiful old cemetery or graveyard, you often see this kind of an arch with this kind of writing engraved above it, and it definitely evokes a memorial. As soon as I saw it, I thought that this must be in memorial to the cat. A cat being remembered. It does have that feel, and I love the house number 4 on it too, really tagging a specific place, a specific time, a period of life. Has some sadness, but it has some happiness too, and that cat looks so beautiful and alive. You did such a beautiful tribute, Linda. I hope that you post the rest of it, because I really want to see Hazel as she evolves even more. So that almost choked me up. That was so pretty. So this next one was also posted in Contemporary Rug Hooking Group by Susan Logie. And she writes, this, my gift to my parents for their 71st wedding anniversary. That is extraordinary in and of itself. I liked this Carla Gerard pattern because it's a more modern take on a traditional subject. And the pattern is 19 by 16 and was purchased from Loretta Moore. So let's look at this. This is just, I love this piece. I really love this piece. This for me is like the epitome of primitive style meeting Art Deco style. It for me has a super, super, super Macintosh, like Scottish artist Macintosh feel to it, with the rounded flowers, particularly the rose. So, so, so evocative. I love the use of color in this piece. I love the use, like the piece we saw earlier of the Jack and the Beanstalk vine. I love that the leaves are the same color. It really grounds it. It's such simple colors. It's so few colors. It really grounds it to use variations of the same sort of celery sage color on the leaves, even though they're different shapes. You've got shading in every one in a really stylistic way that matches the style of the flowers and the style of the vase. Sometimes you see stuff, whether it's painted or hooked, where the composition is such a patchwork, and sometimes it works and sometimes less, because like the flowers are overly developed but the vase isn't, or the background isn't. This piece for me is perfectly and evenly developed. I love the use of color. I love how simple it is, but in its simpleness, it is gorgeous. That's the thing about simple, isn't it? I mean, whether you're hooking or cooking or anything, the more simple you can keep it, the harder it is, but the more effective I think it will be too. I love the way it's framed too. Speaking of choosing a color for a frame, it looks like a bias cloth frame, maybe a bias tape or a cloth frame, but it's picking out the color, the purple, blue, indigo color in the center. And it's super, super, super effective. You could have gone with black, you could have gone with brown or green or anything, but I really love the way that that frame brings your eye back to the center. And one of my favorite things about this piece are the vertical lines behind it. Just that simple turquoise vertical running in the background makes you think of a French windowsill, like with an iron, cast iron decorative thing behind it, the grates, or possibly wallpaper. But what it does is it moves your eye. You're looking at those big fat circles in the center, and then your eye is moving out to the really organic, rounded shapes of the leaves, and then your eye is brought back to the center with those verticals. Oh, I was going to say like prison bars, but that's a bad analogy, because it's a happy looking thing, the striping. I love how the striping is not perfectly straight, perfectly even. I love how it's faint. It just makes you think. It adds to the depth of this piece while the piece remains flat. And I mean flat in a great way. Primitive stuff, rug hooking, often for me, my taste is always the more primitive it looks, the more I'm attracted to it personally. For me, this is one of those pieces. The red pops, all the colors pop, and these white flowers in the center also pop, but I just love the shape of everything in this. It's just gorgeous. Really effective, Susan. You did a really beautiful job there. another piece I really love. So this went up on the Suzanne Wismer studio page, and I think she posted it also in some other ones. She posts such great stuff. But if you are not already a member of her page, you should join, because Suzanne posts stuff about other artists, about other art, so many interesting things. It's one of the few Facebook pages, Suzanne, I go to just to read and look at what you posted, because you find great stuff. And I don't always have a lot of time to be online, so I really appreciate you finding such cool and inspiring stuff to look at, because when I don't have the time to do it, I know I can go to your page and look at stuff that makes me feel good and gives me ideas and makes me happy. So I'm sure a lot of people feel like that. This is a page you should definitely belong to. This is a gorgeous fish. Obviously, this is a bit more difficult. This is not a beginner piece. It's very irregular in shape. It's whipped beautifully around. Let me see if I can get the back of it. Yep, the back of it's there too. The backing fabric is gorgeous, a beautiful wool plaid. You know, I love pieces like this, particularly with the holidays coming up, because you do see a lot of cutout pieces. I think particularly around the holidays, a lot of Santas, a lot of things. This is a summer one, which is exceptional, and you could hang this absolutely anywhere. You could have a whole school of fish. Look at the color variation too, and then the use of yarn right here with the purple around the eye, the yellow, and then the big fat red lips. So pretty. I love the color changing of the body of the fish too. But you're seeing around the holidays a lot of the dummy boards, which are irregular cuts too, in the shape of Santas and bells and wreaths and things like that. And people will do irregular shapes like this. And sometimes you see people do shapes like this, like a fish would work, and mount it on something like an old oil can with like a tall spigoty spout, you know, that you would leave an opening at the bottom, and mount it on something that it would then sit at on the table like a candlestick kind of a thing. But it's so cool to think about possibilities with rugs and rug hooking and punch needle that is not a square, an oval, or a regular shape. Using an unexpected shape like this is challenging, but you can see the payoff is great because it's so unusual. And now there's the possibility of putting this anywhere. You don't have to wonder where there's some floor space or wall space. This is a nice compact piece that you could start a new vignette with, or essentially put it anywhere. I love to go on Suzanne's Pinterest board pages too. She's got a lot of different boards, not just for rug hooking, but for rock painting and recipes and painting flowers, lots of different things. And she describes herself as a lifelong collector of inspiring design ideas, which I think really sums up the essence of all your pages. She writes the things that interest her are animals, fine art, renovation, architecture, natural history, learning, and technology. That's where you lose me, Suzanne. Technology is my super weak point, but that's probably why your pages are so great, because you're good at that. This is a gorgeous piece. I absolutely love it. Make sure you check her out. You're going to love all the pages that she's got and everything you see. So this is completely different from Linda de Villers. I hope that's right. It sounds like it should be French, and I'm kind of maybe killing it. De Villers. Linda, I love this piece. Thanks for letting me use this. I wrote you at the last minute. I love pieces by kids. I do a lot of that myself because I'm an old mom, having had my two kids in my 40s. Oh my God. But this is, she writes, my granddaughter painted a picture of her brother Charlie and herself for me on a ceramic tile. Thinking that the paint would most likely flake off, I recreated her picture of me and Charlie in rug hooking to preserve it. I think that's a good move because flaking off is a possibility, and also cracking into atoms is a possibility, but this rug is going to be there forever. I love how the text on there, me and Charlie, is so childlike. There is something so perfect about using children's designs for rugs. That's why I love using my kids. That's why I love seeing other people do them. You're really capturing the childhood and the naive quality. It's so strange the way that children all draw the same way. It's who can explain it? Probably books can explain it, but I can't explain it. The way that they draw is so similar to each other with very few different changes. The flatness of it is so perfect for folk art, particularly for hooking, because there's no shading, there's no regard at all for perspective. It's just what it is. It's color, it's happy, it's symbols, and it's very, very, very easy to read. I just loved the freshness, the simpleness of this piece, the simple border, The colors, I'm guessing, are real similar to what the granddaughter did in her painting. I just love it. I love the arms on the boy, Charlie. It's like scarecrow arms. It looks like there might be a sheep in the middle or maybe a tire. Um, and then the little girl arms are completely different. So she sees herself differently with the hair versus the hat. It's just it's such a great window into the way kids look and think. It's beautifully done. I love how the sun has some of his rays, but you didn't force all the rays to go around, or your granddaughter didn't force the rays to go around. It's just perfectly framed. It's so colorful, so pretty, so happy. And as soon as I saw this, I started to think about Grandma Moses, and how being a great folk artist doesn't have an age attached to it, because this is a great piece of art. For me, I love this. And if this was in a room in a museum, I would go to it and I would stand in front of it and I would look at it and I would think about the colors and the choices and the way the ground isn't quite under the little girl's feet, but it is under the boy's feet. There's so many different things to look at and to think about here. And then I think about somebody like Grandma Moses, who didn't start painting until she was like 78, I think. There's just no age limit to folk art. You should just, when you feel it, you should just do it. Trust yourself. Take the example of children, just go for it. So this is the opposite of simple. This Leslie Knight posted this in Contemporary Rug Hooking Group. This is truly the opposite of simple. This is so gorgeous, so difficult, not a beginner piece at all. I mean, this got so many positive comments. Everybody loves this piece. It's so over the top pretty and well done. So Leslie wrote, finished a little over a month ago. I posted a picture of my attempt at a peony pattern. Peony. I must say hooking this was a challenge and a joy. There was a lot of ripping out. I learned a lot and looked at a lot of photos of how many of you wonderful hookers have treated your hooked flowers. So once again, this group has inspired and elevated my creations. And she's talking about the Contemporary Rug Hooking Group. You get a lot of feedback in that group. It's a huge group filled with friendly people. I love the way you do your signature too, Leslie. It's so pretty. It's so simple and pretty. This is just absolutely gorgeous. 24 by 24, beautiful peony. I always want to say peony. I don't know why. I lived in Europe for a long time, so we put the emphasis sometimes in the wrong part of the word. I think it's peony. Very sort of Georgia O'Keeffe feel to it. Leslie said in the comments that she did the entire thing more or less in a number 6, and she's never hooked anything smaller than a number 6. She said the exception is in this piece, the dark green on the stem. She used sari silk, that's S-A-R-I, that sort of flat, wide silk ribbon, the dark green. But this is just, I mean, this is just a stunning piece. There's so much shading going on here. It, for me, also has kind of an underwater feel. The greens reaching out. It has kind of it has a coral feeling for me too. There's so much going on. I know the feeling of ripping stuff out over and over and over, and I just can't, Leslie, picture you ripping anything out, because this just seems like such an expert effort for someone like me who's still a beginner. This is just amazing. Leslie also has an Instagram page. Her Facebook page is called, firstly, Hooked on Nature, and her Instagram is the https:// we're all pretty used to that, I think, and then hookedonnature.ca, right, for Canada, so CA. And on her page, she has a video on her Facebook page, the Hooked on Nature, showing the hooking of this piece from the beginning. So you can really look at how it evolves. A big, complicated piece like this, it would be an interesting thing to watch and to get inspiration for. Certainly, like Leslie, if you're hooking flowers, it's not a bad idea to check out other people's flowers, because this is seriously technical, and it's beautiful. It came out wonderful, Leslie. So this is so different. I had to include this. This is so different. This is in the Contemporary Rug Hooking Group. Pamela Mansfield Conley. I've been chatting back and forth with Pamela. What a nice person. What an amazing effort this is. So this brought up a lot of questions, because this is, Pamela writes, this is my first locker hooking design. So a lot of people immediately say, what is locker hooking? Never heard of it. I've heard of it, but I don't quite know what it is. For me, I have never been interested in locker hooking before, but I am now. Mostly, Pamela, because you did so much with horizontals and verticals. And for me, with this piece. I mean, I love the colors. I love the flower. I just now noticed this second that I think there's 2 houses down here, possibly 3. I absolutely love the composition. I love it now that I spotted life underneath the giant flowers too. But when I saw that you were going up and down with your locker hooking, I thought, now that is a master right there. If this is your first piece, that's absolutely crazy. If you're wondering what locker hooking is, in a nutshell, um, it crosses over into everything that you know as a hooker, punch needle person, latch hook person. It's going to cross over into a lot of what you already know. Locker hooking uses a hook that looks like a crochet hook, but it has an eye at the end of it, right? So it's a special locker hook with an eye at the end. It's very easy to get. They're very cheap. They're not easy to find. You're going to have to order one if you want one. But this is an old form of needle art, and locker hooking was very, very popular between the 1920s and 1940s. One of the benefits of locker, so the backing for locker hooking is like a latch hook backing. So very, very stiff, wide open window pane backing, not a rug backing like you would use for punch or hooking. It's the latch hook backing. So super stiff canvas. So just the general principle, just to give you an idea of how this is done, is you are pulling up fabric loops like you would be if you were hooking, but you are then, after pulling them up, running through them, right through the center of the loops with the hook, with more fabric in the eye of the needle, almost like you're sewing through the hoops, and you're leaving and locking your loops with this cross stitch of ribbon fabric. So I hope that makes sense. You're pulling up loops and then you're locking the hoops down by running another piece of fabric through the hoops and leaving it there. So it locks the hoops up at that set height above the surface of the canvas. So you're essentially filling each row of loops with another piece of fabric. It sounds complicated. It's not. One of the benefits of doing locker hooking is you don't need any frame. It's just like latch hook. It's a super stiff canvas. You just put it down on the table, and the best way to do locker hooking is to finish the frame first, the border of it first. So when you start, you literally fold the edges back. This is something you'd want to see. I'm thinking about making a locker hooking video because it's complicated to say, but you're, in a nutshell, folding back the edges of the stiff canvas and finishing that first by hooking through both layers, right? And then you can finish your edges, but you're locking the extra behind. So there's no finishing at the end, which is something that hookers and punchers often dread. With locker hooking, you do that part first. So that's a huge benefit. Another benefit to locker hooking is you don't necessarily use wool, and you probably don't want to use wool because you're using so much fabric. There's no benefit to using wool unless you really want it on the floor and you need it to be sturdy. You can use, if you're a quilter, you can use your quilting fabric. You can use any fabric. So that's a huge pro. The con is that it's a little more fiddly than hooking because you're hooking and then you're running the needle through your loops to lock them in place on the surface. So there's lots of pros. That's a pretty big con, but I think once you see it being done, you know how to do it immediately. It's intuitive. Once you see somebody do it, you know how to do it. It becomes more complicated if you do what Pamela's done here and do horizontals and verticals. And every time you loop, for example, X amount of, look at this white flower if you're with me, maybe there's 10 loops across, you would do those 10 in white and you actually leave the material looped around your hook. So the hook becomes wrapped as you go. And then you run the hook back through with the fabric you want in the eye of the needle, run it right under them. So when you're doing directional stuff like this, you are planning ahead and thinking ahead. And I think it's a bit more complicated, but I think the effect of having this directional up and down movement, it's exceptional. And you really would have a hard time doing something that looks like this with any kind of rug hooking or punch needle. This really looks like locker hooking. It's really beautifully done. I hope that made a little bit of sense. Maybe I'll do a video on it. It's a fun thing, and like I say, so many rug hookers are also quilters or were quilters, and you probably have a embarrassing stash of fabric that grew and grew and grew as you hoarded that you wonder what you're going to do with. I know for me, I do not like to take my sewing machine out anymore, other than to just zigzag the edges of my rug hooking patterns so they don't unravel. But other than that, I do not like to touch the machine, look at the machine, haul the machine around. It weighs 10 tons. Um, and I don't use my quilting fabric as a result. So this would be a nice way to use fabric that you're thinking about, and just do something different. Do something, try something different. Like the latch hooking that I was doing last month. It's just something different, and it gives your wrists and your arms a rest if you do so much hooking that you're starting to get weird pains and stuff. Try something different like locker hooking. Pamela, this is so good. You did such a nice job. It's an extraordinary piece. Your colors are just crazy good. And in some places, I can see you left little tails up. And I just love that. I just love that. It's just so, it's delicious. It really is. I absolutely love it. It's beautiful. You did a great job. And our last piece, something so different. This was put up by Karen D. Miller on her page, Karen D. Miller Studio. Oh, it won't go up any further, but Karen, just as you would expect to spell it, Karen, middle initial, Miller Studio. Karen's got a great page too. She's a proper artist. Her internet page is karend.millerstudio.com. She is also the author of the book that you've probably been seeing here and there on all the rug hooking pages, called Eyes Open to the World, like a woman in a red coat looking out with her back to you, kind of on a rock configuration, like stony base. Really, really pretty. This piece is just extraordinary. If you've seen it, you remember it. There's no question about that. It's a very modern piece. I think this was also in the contemporary rug hooking group. It's a very modern piece, contemporary, with a very contemporary frame that really suits it. This is one of 3 of Karen's pieces in her series that she calls Motherhood Still Lifes. This really says it all. If you have had kids, or you have had kids around, you have seen these kinds of scenes over and over and over. It's like, at first glance, it's almost like erotic, and then you look at it and it's like, it's a Barbie doll, but it's such a signature sight for parents, I think, to see this kind of mess of toys in bizarre places like the bathroom where there's a sink. Just super typical. It's so funny. It's so humorous. I love the way the dolls are just blankly staring off into space. I love the highlights on the dolls. I love the different skin tones. It makes it so interesting. This doll with dark hair that makes the composition just perfect, with that dark bottom in that one left-hand corner, the bottom left, the corner that always gets left out and forgotten. The eye wants to leave it. I can't leave it with this piece because that dark hair is anchoring that bottom corner. It's so funny. It's so pretty. It's so neat to know that it's part of a series. I looked for the rest of the series and I could only find a partly done one, but I'm going to keep looking, and you should too, because it's such an interesting concept. Doing things that a theme like this, like a motherhood series. In modern times, mothering is so different, particularly now. Something like this really resonates with other parents, and I think grandparents too. I think Karen uses yarn. I think I read that somewhere. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. But in any case, you should certainly go and check out her page. One of the reasons this piece appealed to me so much is a personal reason. My sister, who is one of the heads of the art restoration department at Yale, so her job is restoring very famous paintings. They don't fool with stuff that's not worth, bazillions of dollars. But she does that during the day, but she also paints, and she has done so many paintings of broken dolls that I think are really interesting and pretty, and broken down things at playgrounds, like if you remember those old Boinger things, like the things that used to have a big coily spring on the bottom that you could easily put your foot in and take your leg off in the olden days when people didn't worry about that. But because I own so many pictures of broken down dolls and toys, when I saw this, my heart just jumped, because it was so similar in its theme and in its thrust, and I just loved the humor. I loved the newness. I loved the nakedness. I loved the composition. I loved that it's a partial joke on the viewer. You look and you just see naked, and then you look again and you see dolls, and I just thought that was so clever and so funny. I love this piece, Karen. I hope everybody goes and checks out Karen's page, because she's got a really interesting page and an interesting site and a fantastic career going. So I'm going to do the outro now, and let me see if I can shut this off in the meantime. Boop, boop.
So I hope you enjoyed looking at those rugs with me. I think it was a really fun week in rug hooking, and I have to give a shameless plug after the Karen Miller rug, show you the similarity I was talking about with my sister's paintings, this sort of deconstructionalist stuff. I thought it was really similar. This is a small painting, of course, unlike the Barbie rug completely, but this is a little bit more like the Barbie rug. I just thought it was a funny coincidence. Two things that I have hanging in the hall. This has been a questionable thing, hanging in the hall. I don't think my mom particularly likes it where it's hanging at the foot of the stairs, but it matches great, and it matches the curtains, and I absolutely love it. And why not have doll butts hanging out all over the place, because it's art, and it's cool, and it just, yeah, it says a lot about motherhood and about deconstructing things, which is something that children do naturally. So I hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and I will be back in less than a week with week 3 because I am so behind. So look for that in the next few days. And until then, have a great week from Ribbon Candy Hooking.